Okay, so decided to make videos talking about some stuff that I've gone through. Um, I'm hoping to be able to help people that have been or are going through the same thing as I did. Um, I went through 6 years of abuse, and that's a long time to deal with it. Uh, and it didn't start out. Didn't start out like abuse. I thought it was joking. I thought that he was just playing around. Um, it started. Um, I met him in a gas station in 2009. Um, I had just lost my job and I was actually married at the time. Um, met him in November. Uh, my marriage was already falling apart. It was just not good. I was going to school. I was doing 19 credit hours, and I don't know if you know anything about school, but one class is 3 credit hours usually, and so I was doing 7 classes. One was only worth 1 credit hour, so I was doing 7 classes, and it was hard work. Uh, but I was a 4.0 student, um, and I loved school, like loved it. Uh, when my ex-husband, my first husband, left, um, he took the money. Uh, he actually moved in with my sister for a little bit, but I had a roommate whose name was Carmi. Um, she's my best friend, uh, and she's helped me through a lot. But I had her, and after I met my soon-to-be ex-husband in the gas station, uh, we didn't even see each other until after my husband left. And when he left, I went to the gas station. I was hanging out with Carmi because she was working. And he walked in and he started joking around with me. Well, I smoked weed. I'm not going to deny that. Everybody knows that that's what I did. And so he actually invited me to go smoke with him. And so I left, tried to follow him, and he just took off. We ended up hanging out that night at my friend Blaze's house. So we hung out, and he didn't have to work the next day. We had to go. Me and Carmi had to go a few hours, like 3 hours away. Actually, more than that, I think, like 4 hours away the next morning to go see or to go pick up our friend Chip, that was actually her boyfriend. So we had to make this really long trip, and I hadn't had any sleep, and I knew Carmi was gonna fall asleep on the way. And so I asked him, "Hey, do you want to go with us?" And he said yes. Well, not too long after that, we were actually being evicted. I didn't have a job. I didn't have the money to stay in my apartment, and my ex took the money. I don't blame him. It was his money, um, because, like I said, I hadn't been working. So Ben, my most recent ex, said, "I have a 3 bedroom house. Y'all can stay there." Um, and so we said, okay. Well, he said that I wouldn't have to work. He would just have Carmi pay $250 in rent every month, Carmi and Chip, and we wouldn't have to worry about it. And he'd take care of us. And so we said, okay. Um, and we moved in. Well, we ended up getting together. Um, and as his Christmas present, because I got my pension from my job that I had lost. So, as his Christmas present, I took him to California because he hadn't seen his mom in years. And so I said, "Hey, we're going to go to California and see your mom for Christmas." So that's what we did. Well, Carmi and Chip had already paid their rent. But when we were getting ready to leave California, he says, "We don't have the money to get home." Excuse me, I did not just come to California to stay. And so he calls up Carmi and he says, hey, I need y'all to wire us the money for rent. And she says, I already paid rent. He ended up kicking him out. When we got back, they were already gone. And that's when it really started. Um, we were cleaning out a room one night, like the spare room. We were cleaning it up and organizing everything. And there was a suitcase. And then there was a handsaw. Um, and he says, he looks at me dead in the eyes. I will never forget this. He looks at me dead in the eyes and says, I could cut you up with this saw and bury you in this suitcase, and no one would ever find you. And I laughed about it. I got a demented sense of humor. I don't know if you can see this, but I have a tattoo that says twisted, okay? I have a twisted sense of humor, and so it was just kind of funny to me. Like, yeah, okay. Um, but then everything changed after that. He actually wouldn't let me listen to my music anymore. Like, he would get mad at me for it. Uh, and I would wear makeup. See, I like to wear makeup. I like to look nice. And at that time, I was a lot smaller than I am now. I've had 3 kids in the past 6 years, and well, in the past 4 years, and so I don't look as nice as I used to. But I used to curl my hair all the time. And by the way, y'all like my blue? Off track. So I used to like curl my hair, and it was always up and pretty, and I always had my makeup on, and I wore cute clothes. Like, I did what I wanted to do. Um, and he started like asking me, why are you wearing that? Why are you wearing that? Why are you doing your makeup? Why are you doing your hair? Um, he wouldn't let me do it. And so I stopped. Like, I didn't want to cause problems. I didn't know what his deal was. And so I stopped. I was like, whatever. Um, I got up every morning. I cooked him breakfast, gave it to him in bed. While he was eating, I would get a shower. Because I had to go to school 4 days a week. Um, and so I would just get everything done, go ahead, make his lunch. He had it with him to take to work. He left the house at 7. I left at 7:30. So I would stop at his work and I would say, hey, bye, I'll see you later. Have a good day, whatever. Um, and I found out very quickly that I had to be home at like 4, which is hard to do when your school is 45 minutes away, and your last class goes out at 3:30. But I had to make it home by 4 o'clock so I could make dinner and make sure the house was clean and spotless. And he was a clean freak. Um, and then, like, he started calling me fat. Okay, now, right now, I'm fat. uh, I've I just had a baby 2 months ago, and so I'm not small, but at that time I was not fat. I look back at those pictures and think, man, I wish I was as fat as I was then, because I was not fat. So he starts telling me I'm fat and ugly, and I had pretty good self-esteem at the time. I was not like full of myself, but I knew I wasn't ugly, and so sorry, I gotta resituate. And so for him to start like telling me all these things about myself, I didn't understand it. And then he started telling me, I couldn't wear makeup and I couldn't wear the clothes that I liked. Um, so I quit. Um, and I just got really down on myself. Well, my whole family lived in in Spearman, where we lived. But he says to get closer to my school, he moved me to Borger. Uh, I don't think that was the case. I really think it was so that he would have more control over me, because as soon as we moved, it got worse. A lot worse. Um, I'm talking, I had a little dog, and he would take my little dog. It was like a Pomeranian and weenie dog mix, kind of. as weird as that sounds. But it was little. It was a little dog, like fit in your purse type little. Um, and he would take my dog and throw him against the wall. Um, he punched a pit bull in the face. He punched a pit bull in the face and ended up breaking his hand. Like, dude was just out there. And that was because the dog got a hold of his energy drink. And to him, energy drink is like crack. Man, he's like, he wants them all the time. And if he doesn't have them, he's just psycho. So he wouldn't work. So I was still going to school. I started working at Pizza Hut. Well, he was still married. I mean, we're still married to other people, but I had let my ex go. I was going through a divorce. I had already signed papers on it. Like, we were done. I was paying for his phone because he refused to work. And so I would come home from work with, okay, he required 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and then his soda, and which was Diet Coke, and food. That's fine, cool. I got food. So I would bring home his stuff. Well, I made sure he always had a phone, so I could get a hold of him. He could talk to his mom and his dad and all that, because they all lived out of state. And so I came home from work one day, and he was on the phone with his ex. I saw messages saying, "I love you." You're using the phone I'm paying for? Like, you don't even work. I supply everything you need. So that just, it didn't make sense to me. Well, at 3 o'clock in the morning one day, because we stayed up late, 3 o'clock in the morning one day, we're sitting there watching a movie, and his phone goes off. And it was a Facebook message from his ex. And it said, "Call me. 3 o'clock in the morning, call me." Alright, that's cool. So he turns the movie off, and he calls her. Well, my rule was, if you're going to use my phone in my house where I pay all the bills, you're going to put your phone on speaker when you're talking to her. And so he did. So he puts his phone on speaker, and he's talking to her. And they start the "I love you" game. And I said, no, you need to go ahead and get off the phone. And maybe that was controlling of me. It was my phone. You're not going to disrespect me in that way. He wouldn't get off the phone. Wouldn't do it. So I left. And then I came back. And I said, this is my house. Like, I pay for this. I'm not leaving. But you're going to give me that phone. And so he finally gave it to me. Well, then one day, he was eating, like, I had made roasted potatoes and carrots, and he was eating it. He got mad at me, and he threw the plate, and it hit me right in the face. It was like, bam! There was ketchup everywhere, all over my face. It looked like I was bleeding. He starts throwing knives at me, like butcher knives. He was going crazy, throwing knives. He took all the plates out of the cabinet and crashed them, like smashed them all on the ground. And then, like, he tried to break a pickle jar, a gallon-sized pickle jar, and it wouldn't break, and so that pissed him off. That's when he started throwing the knives at me. And so I got into the bathroom with my phone, and I texted my friend. I couldn't call anybody, but I texted my friend James, who was working at Pizza Hut with me, and I said, get here now with the cops. So he did. Well, when the cops showed up, because Ben had cut himself on his arms. And so when the cops showed up, they said, "What are those cuts?" And he says, "Oh, I hurt myself while I was working on the car." Well, they asked me, "What's that on your face? Is that blood? Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. It's ketchup. It's good." So they said, "Do you want to press charges?" And I was like, "No, I'll just leave. I'll just go." Um, and my plan was I was just going to leave. I was going to take my dog. I was going to take my stuff and just jet to Amarillo where my mom and dad were living then. So I left and I went up to Pizza Hut because James was going to give me the money to get to Amarillo because I was broke. And Ben calls me or texts me and he says, "Garrett's coming to get me." Garrett is his best friend from California. He said, "Garrett's coming. If you want to say bye to me, you better come do it." Okay, I'll come say bye to you. So I walk in the door to our house and there's a note sitting on the couch that says something about like goodbye. It was a suicide note. So I walked into the back room and he was hanging by a cable cord from the ceiling fan. He had tied it around the ceiling fan and then made a noose out of it, and he was hanging there. And I don't know how I did it because this dude, okay, y'all, you can't tell how tall I am. I am 6'4" on a tall day. Um, I'm 5'4" on a tall day. He's 6'4", so he's a full foot taller than me. At this time, I was like 170 pounds. Y'all might think that's fat. I wasn't. The way I'm built, I wasn't. Anyways, um, he was like 240 pounds. I lifted him up. I got the noose off his neck and he fell. He lived, of course. And so I called the cops then because I had a suicide note. That's what they needed. They needed a suicide note, like proof that he had done this. And so I left the cable cord up. He was on the floor. He had a mark on his neck. I had a suicide note. I called the cops. And they said, "Okay, we'll take him." So they took him and they were supposed to put him in the pavilion for a minimum of 3 days. Okay, let me back up. This was in like April. Okay. In February, right before we moved, was actually in the pavilion because he tried to slit his throat. Okay, and the cops saw him trying to do it, and so um, they put him in the pavilion for 3 days. I should have known then, y'all. I should have known then. So they take him to the hospital, and I went up there to see him. And I was like, "We can work through this. You can get on medicine. Everything's going to be fine." Well, they released him on the conditions that he was going to go down to this place called MHMR. It's mental health, mental retardation. It's for people without insurance that need mental help, like they need it. And so we went down there. They did the intake and we did all that. I even went in and got counseling because I knew I needed it. Well, it's licensed psychiatrists, and so they put us on medicine. They had him on Prozac or something, Prozac or Paxil. But he goes in and he's doing it, whatever. We start staying up at all hours of the night. He was across the street trying to screw some chick one night. It just was not good. And so we just kept trying to work through it. Well, we ended up getting custody of my little sister. Because my dad is not a good guy, and her mom was like, "I can't handle her. She's kind of crazy." She's like her big sister. So we went up and we got custody of her, and we brought her back down. That poor girl. She witnessed some serious stuff. He started choking me. And in every fight we would get into, he would take my glasses off my face and snap them. He destroyed my car. I had a 2003 Monte Carlo, and that was my baby. He kicked the fenders in one time. Um, he he was mad all the time, all the time. He was mad, and he would go like he'd be all nice and sweet, and then bam, he would like just explode on me. I would try to be in the bathroom, like getting clothes out of the laundry chute, and he would bust the door open and break the door. He would throw me through the walls. There was like body holes in the walls everywhere. Um, and he choked me. He choked me a lot. He never punched me at this point. He never punched me, but he would slap me in my face. He would tear my shirts, trying to like grab me to come back. Um, he was crazy, like legit crazy. But I stayed. I stayed. I said he'll change, so I stayed. Um, so we moved again, and we were still like in Borger, but we moved. This was the third house in Borger in like 5 months. So we moved, and we had a roommate named Jade. And we had my little sister. Um, well, we had taken my little sister back to Oklahoma. She couldn't handle it. What he was doing to me, she couldn't handle it, and she shouldn't have even had to see it. She dealt with enough of that whenever her mom and our dad were together. So we took her back. And Jade, he wasn't there one day. He was at school or something because he was going to college too. Um, while I was at school, I didn't have a phone. I didn't have internet at home. I didn't have a computer. I didn't have nothing. So I was doing my work at school, um, in the library. Well, my sister, my oldest sister, messages me on Yahoo. And she says, "Where was Ben last night?" Well, he had gone to Spearman to do something, to get the cherry picker, I think. And I told her he was in Spearman. And she said, he was over at Lindsay's. Well, Lindsay was this girl that he had already been with before. He was over at Lindsay's. Well, what was funny about that was he left at like noon. It's 45 minutes there, 45 minutes back. We called me at 4 o'clock and said I'm on my way home. All right. He calls me at 8:30 and says I'm on my way home. You just like called me 4.5 hours ago and said that you were on your way home. So he calls me at 8:30 and says I'm on my way home. Okay. He showed up after midnight. So I went home and I confronted him. And I said, "Let me see the phone." And he asked why. And I said, "Somebody told me you were with Lindsay last night." He said, "No, I was at her mom's house." Okay, let me see the phone. Let me call her mom. Let me see. And he wouldn't. He would, like, no matter how many times I asked, dude would not let me have his phone. And then he reached up and he punched me right in the nose. I thought he broke my nose. And he probably would have, but I've already had a broken nose once. And so this up here is all plastic. Like, it's not even bone anymore. So I think that's why he wasn't able to break it. But he punched me right in the nose. And then it was, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Uh, I had elephants that my grandma had given me. And then my grandma passed away in like 97 or 90, 97. Uh, he broke them. Every last one of them, he broke them. And I lost it. I had like a mental breakdown. I was sitting on the floor trying to put the pieces back together. And I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but grandma's gonna be mad. Grandma's gonna be real mad because at that time I just didn't know what was going on. It's like it didn't click in my head that she was already gone. Uh, so this was in 2010. In October 2010, his mom came and got us. Or, well, she needed our help in California, so she got us Greyhound tickets. And so we went up to Oklahoma, or to California to help her move and like redo her house. Well, I was still in school, and so I was like, okay, well, I'll just email my professors. I'll let them know I'm gonna be gone for a couple weeks. I'll be back. Whatever. I'll do my classwork online and turn it in like that. This was October 3rd that we left. Come October 31st, we were back in Texas with a trailer to get our stuff. And what do? Do I go and like have a place to live and be in California with the man that I think I love? Or do I stay? I mean, I didn't have a job anymore. I didn't have rent money. I didn't have anywhere to go. So I left. We went to California. And then I ended up getting pregnant with my oldest son, Benji. He's 4 now. He's got an anger problem from hell. And I feel like that's my fault because um, I stayed for so long. Um, but I'm going to dot right here. And I'll be back later or tomorrow or whenever. And I'll continue my story.